everybody, to Road to Retirement. My name is Chris Anselmo with Brookside Tax and Financial Group, and also our sister law firm, Anselmo and Company. So with me is Tony Shore. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for asking. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show today. Just one Tony today instead of two.
Tony. The other Tony's he's got another engagement. I think it's a doctor's appointment. Not 100% sure, but
Sure.
he's not here today. But so we thought we'd change up when we talk about legal stuff today. So many of you know I'm also, besides the CPA, I'm also an attorney, and we really concentrate in estate planning and elder care planning, which elder care is basically from today until you die, and estate planning is
Yeah.
after you die, right? So,
Right.
because a lot of people don't know what elder care means.
But
So
you need to do both planning for both right
you
now.
do, because the critical issue is a little off topic for today, but is between now and death, right? I mean,
Right.
we'll have shows on that about what do you do for, the big issue there obviously is long-term care and nursing home planning. How do you pay for it? How do you avoid having to spend down all your assets? So we can do a show on that. And but today I thought we'd do the simple stuff. The simple stuff is most people, I wouldn't say most people, but I had some stat I read somewhere that like 60 to 70% of people don't have wills.
Wow.
So it's kind of a lot. So, the will is
Yeah,
just
we hear about it all the
Yeah.
time. Famous people die all the
Oh, yeah,
time, and
yeah.
you hear, they didn't have a will, or
So your will, and one thing is your will is basically your directions, what to do with all your assets when you're no longer here. And the other thing is that your will doesn't do anything for you before you pass away. So it really doesn't kick in until you pass away. So there are some items that we tell people that don't put in your will, because normally the will, unless you give it to someone ahead of time, the will normally isn't read for a few weeks after you're gone, right? I mean, they have the funeral and all. Okay, let's see what Uncle George said to give everybody. So a couple items. I made a little list here. Maybe I just question Mr. Shore. What do you think you should not put in your will?
This is a new one for me. I've never thought of. I thought you put everything and anything you could in your will to make sure you're completely covered. But I know that, things that already have beneficiary designations, like certain financial accounts, if you have life insurance, annuities,
so
other assets, those have beneficiary designations.
So that's one of them. So don't put beneficiaries of your IRAs and your life insurance and your maybe annuities in your will, because the annuity or life insurance policy or IRA already has beneficiaries on them, and they could be conflicting, right? So
and those take precedent over
those
what
take
you
precedent,
put it.
right? So if
you
I
can write anything you want in the will, but if the beneficiary designation is different on an account, then it's going to the beneficiary designation.
Right. So unless you can prove some type of fraud, right, or something.
Right.
And we had a situation, and we actually brought a suit over it, where the person had his daughters on his life insurance policy forever, and somehow it got changed to his, not even yet, basically his fiance, right? So there was a lawsuit over it. We got it resolved, but so that's one of them. But the first one I tell people is, like, don't put your funeral or burial instructions in your will.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
I did not know that.
Well, like we said earlier, oftentimes the will isn't read or looked at a few weeks after the services, right? So, you read the will and it says, oh, he didn't want to be cremated. So you need to communicate that with your loved ones, whoever's going to take or prepay it, go ahead and do your funeral arrangements. But oftentimes, if it says, like, do not cremate me, and then you cremated them, if it's the other way around, you can always dig them up and cremate them, right? But if you cremate them, they said, I don't want to be cremated. So that's probably one of the first things. Another one is organ donations. Organ donations need to be immediate, right? I mean,
I sense a trend here. Anything that's immediate or needs to happen right away after you die, don't put in your will.
Right. So organ donations, like the organs need to be fresh, right? So they,
Yeah.
2 weeks later, and they said, "Oh, you should have gave my organs away." We're like, it's a little late, right? So,
Right.
so organ donations, and there's a separate document for that, either your living will or your healthcare power of attorney, that you can. Normally, when we do a will, you'll have issues like that. So you'll have documents that say, and even most states have a little symbol on your license
Yeah.
plate or license
Yeah. Driver's
driver's license.
license. Yeah.
So
That's taken care of through your driver's license.
so
Yeah.
if you're in a car crash or something like that, then and the other one is to maybe file it with your doctor, your hospital. So if that
Sure.
came. So we talked a little bit about our IRA designation. So for listeners out there, most people's IRAs, anything with a beneficiary, let's put it this way, to start, anything with a beneficiary is not going to be is not going to go through your will. Your will is only designed to um, take assets that are stuck in the decedent's name and nobody else's name's on them. So your wife's name's on it, your kids' name, nobody, it's just an asset you have over there. Nobody else's name's on it. There's no beneficiary. There's nothing on it. So we need to get that asset out of that name. So anything that has a beneficiary designation is going to avoid the will.
Sure.
But it could cause conflict, because if it says, look, I want my IRA to go to my wife, and then the IRA somehow lists my brother,
Right.
well, maybe you never changed it before you got married, right? I mean, you got
Sure.
married,
Yeah.
and then, before I was married, I had my brother on it, but now I got married, I should have put my wife on it. So that could cause some issues. Life support decisions. We talked a little bit about that, whether or not you want to stay on life support, that needs to be in a separate document, because again, it's going to be too late if they have to find your will to do that. Also times, assets that are in a trust. So a lot of people use trusts to avoid probate and things like that. So if those assets are in the trust is going to govern where they go. And again, you could cause conflict if you say, look, I want my house to go to my brother, but in the trust document, it says it goes to the kids. So if the house is in the trust, then it's going to go to the kids. If the house is not in the trust, it's going to end up going to the brother. So, I mean, certain assets like that, you just have to be careful with, because we see that time and time. You don't really want to cause a conflict. And most of the conflicts work themselves out. But if you have adversarial people,
Oh yeah, and you've seen it all. I know you've seen people,
sure, write a
families
book on
fight.
it. Have a bestseller. Get rid of all these other books we have, and just write the horror stories of estate planning.
Yeah. I mean, it's you hear some of these horror stories, but I want to go back and ask you. I have a question for
Sure.
you, even for my own personal, my wife and I, and our family situation. You said if something needs to be delegated right away once
Correct.
you die, like whether or not you're cremated or buried. Do you want to be cremated or buried? Do you want to be an organ donor? Things like that. You mentioned something else that was time specific.
Life
What?
support.
Life support. Yes, exactly. So those types of things, if you don't put them in your will, how do you communicate those? Is there a document that will be looked at right away?
So the life support, there's two documents, at least here in Ohio. The one is a living will, which I think is misnamed because people either think it's a will or they think it's a trust, and they need to get a different name for it. But your living will is your direction to the doctor. Look, doc, if I'm ever terminally ill and permanently unconscious and I have no chance of recovery, and the only thing that's keeping me alive is the machines, I'm telling you, I want you to pull the plug. Right. So the other document is a healthcare power of attorney, which is kind of for everything else. You're in a car accident. They need to operate. Call my wife. She's on the other table. You're both unconscious. Call my brother. Right. So that's usually called a healthcare power of attorney or healthcare directive.
Yeah.
So those are two separate documents, and you also there is in Ohio we have another document where you can lay out your burial and show who's gonna have right to your body, like who's gonna make your burial decisions for you. So those are all separate documents that we have available. And look, the other thing is make your intentions known before. These issues come up when people die early. Like
Mhm.
people are 93 years old. Like we already figured out what funeral home they're going to. They already prepaid it, that type of stuff. But people die unexpectedly. That can cause issue. Where do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? What are you Catholic? Are you what church are you going to go to? That those types of things have to be or should be laid out. They don't have to be. The other thing that we say normally when you're either giving an asset away or you're giving, you don't need to describe why. Like, I'm giving $20,000 to my grandchild Betty. I'm not sure there's a Betty that's a grandchild. How about Betty?
You went the wrong
Elizabeth.
way.
How about
The
Elizabeth?
grandmother's name is
Right.
Betty. The grandchild's name is
Heather.
Emily or
Right.
something.
So, and I'm giving it to her because she always called me on my birthday when I needed a ride in the car. She came and got me, and I'm not giving it to Susie because she never called me and she was mean to me. And you don't need all that in there. If you want to give something to someone, just say, look, I'm giving Emily $10,000, right?
Right.
Or if you want to disinherit someone, and we have this often, either from for whatever reason, right? You want to disinherit someone, you don't have to leave them a specific dollar amount. It used to be, it used to be like, I'm going to leave them $1, right? Because what happens then is I have to find that person and give them $1, right? I mean, your will said give them $1. So now what we just say, look, we're disinheriting Tony Shore, and you don't even have to put reasons. And some people say, look, it might be that I already provided for them during my life, or they're well off, they don't need my money, and I'm going to give it to charity. So, but try to keep the dirty laundry out of because what that can
It
cause
makes it hard on your what do you call it? Whoever is administrating the
right. And what it could cause, it could potentially cause a conflict. Well, grandma said you went over there the reason she's giving you the money is because you went over there
Yeah.
every Christmas, and the last 3 years you didn't go over there, so you probably shouldn't get the money, right? So,
Yeah.
and those are probably the areas we see the most that probably shouldn't be included.
Okay.
So normally the things you want to include.
Yeah. What are the do's?
Yeah.
We've talked about the don'ts.
Yeah. So the dues, look, you have to pick an executor. So the
Yeah,
executor
that's
is
the word I was. An
the-
executor.
The
Yes.
executor is the person who's going to administer the will and do what you tell them to do. So,
Mhm.
like in my case, it's my wife, and then if he's not around, it's my brother. So, I mean, ours will say, look, leave everything to our trust, or leave everything to the children, or But wills can be very detailed. I want my son to get my Rolex. I want my daughter to get our paintings. I mean,
Sure.
whatever it is. So. Now, in some jurisdictions, you could put all that in a will, or you can do it in a separate writing. That you can just give so you don't want to necessarily lay it all out in a will. You have to check with your jurisdictions. So a lot of those things you need to keep. So executors, who's a backup? Oftentimes people pick maybe their parents as their executor, but your parents are getting older and older and older, or you did the will 30 years ago and your parents are no longer there. So normally what happens is if there's no executor, then somebody's going to have to, if there's no executor left that's named, somebody would have to apply to become executor.
Mhm.
And that is then problematic. Are they relatives? Do they need to post a bond? Bonds are expensive. Or maybe it's just, my phone keeps going off. Maybe somebody should apply. Maybe the attorney will do it. A lot of times the attorney, I don't want to say wants to do it or gets stuck doing it. One thing, the judge has jurisdiction over us attorneys. So,
Sure.
like Chris, you've handled 500 probate cases. I'm appointing you.
Yeah.
So-
Why do I have to be the executor?
Well, I
mean,
because sometimes it's just as much work in a small estate, or more work
Yeah. Oh,
than
I
in
know.
you could have
Yeah.
a $1 million estate that has one account, one house, and you could have a $30,000 estate that has 6 bank accounts, right?
Right.
So,
My wife's father passed away a year ago or a year and a half ago, and her sister became the executor. And I said, Sarah, I said, you dodged a bullet because,
yeah,
I never want to be anybody's
Yeah.
executor.
Or
It's a lot of work.
or someti- yeah,
I mean, not to be selfish. If you love that person, you want to make sure it's taken care of. I get it, but People don't realize how much work that is, and it's a big responsibility,
Right.
and you don't want to make a mistake either.
And if maybe when they named you at first, you lived in that state. Tony, you live in Minnesota now,
Yeah.
so and I'm in Ohio. So if I appointed you, like you're like, well, I'm not coming to Ohio. That's
Right.
So
And the
you could
same way,
you could always wait.
I would definitely appoint you as my executor if we were in the same state. So you're just lucky I live in Minnesota.
Well, just make sure you die in the summer. Not coming to Minnesota in the winter. But so
Yeah.
but things like that. So so you got to be current. The other one is real estate. So oftentimes real estate, you may have real estate in Minnesota and in Cleveland. So who gets the Minnesota real estate? Who gets the Cleveland real estate? And some of the issues there is if you have assets in other states like that, sometimes we don't use wills to do that because like the judge here in Ohio has no jurisdiction over the property in Minnesota. So we'd have to open up another probate in Minnesota just to handle
Oof.
that. So
Yeah.
it gets and then most likely I'd have to find another attorney because I'm not licensed in Minnesota. So we'd have to
Right.
find another. So it could get complicated.
Well, real estate gets complicated anyway.
Yeah.
It can be. You've told me some stories you've mentioned on past shows about how dealing with, sisters who were both on the house and both on the one was not on a bank
Oh
account,
yeah,
things like that. Yeah.
So you want to make it clean as possible.
Yeah.
Issues you have with real estate is if if the executor could sell the real estate and then just divvy up the proceeds, but if it says like I want my house to go to Tony Shore, that doesn't say sell the house and give the
Right.
proceeds to Tony Shore,
Yeah.
right? So, what if Tony Shore is I want to say mentally incompetent? What if Tony Shore is going
little
through,
too close to home? Little too close.
no, but
to home.
what if that person's going through a divorce? What if that what if
Right.
something in their life's like we
Yeah.
can't give them the house right now? They got $200,000 in, I was going to say student loans, but those might be forgiven today. But
Right. Yeah, that's
no.
true.
What if you had a bunch of IRS
Never know.
debts and things like so?
Yeah.
So you got to be careful about that. Who are the beneficiaries? Make sure you don't. Again, we talked about IRA designations and assets that have designations. Maybe you want to be consistent there.
Yeah.
And usually we don't even put those in because those have beneficiary designations, but sometimes, believe it or not, they don't have designations on them.
Mhm.
So they end up getting paid to the estate. So like I could say my IRA goes to my daughter, and hopefully my IRA at the Schwab or TD Ameritrade has my daughter's name on it, but it has nobody's name on it. Then it's going to end up back in the estate, and then the estate would say, give it to my daughter, right? So if you are going to put those in there, you want to make sure they're consistent, right? So the other one is for younger families is guardians for the children. Who's, God forbid you guys
and
die
that's
early.
part of a living will. I remember my wife and I, when we first had kids, we did a living will.
But that should be in your will. So
in
at
the
least here in
will
Ohio.
itself,
So if
yeah.
if you have minor children and you die, you're telling the court who you want to be the guardian.
Yeah, it's
right?
our will. Yeah, I guess it was a will,
Now,
not a living will.
Now they don't have to honor that. This is well, first of all, the court doesn't have to honor anything, right? So even if I appoint Tony Shore as my executor, the court could say, we're not appointing Tony Shore. So
we've seen pictures.
I mean, 90% of the time they appoint whoever you say. But if they find out, look, he's out of town, he's been through 6 bankruptcies, like the judge, like we're not getting involved in that. So nobody's the executor until we talked about solution. Nobody's the executor until the judge puts his little seal on the paper, says, okay, you're the executor. Same thing with the guardian. So if the person you name shows up to the guardianship hearing drunk and smelling like dope, he's probably not going to be the guardian, right? So you may,
and he probably doesn't want to be the guardian.
Yeah,
if he's doing that.
No, but I mean for your children, right?
Yeah,
so,
I know. Yeah.
So so basically you're nominating who you want as the guardian, and you probably should have a backup too. so that then the judge says, okay, we've interviewed this person, they seem kosher, and okay, they're the guardian. And then the guardian's a lot of responsibility, because there's two types of guardians for children. There's one, a guardian for the person, and there's something, the guardian for, it's called the estate, but the money. So in our situation, when our kids were little, we had, my sister would take the children, but my brother would watch the money for the children. Right. So
Sure.
so you could separate those roles. Um, if someone's better with money than I. So
Yeah.
my sister, I gotta love her, but we used to tease her when she was little. I think I mentioned this on another show. I mean, like 4 years old, right? She's like, 2 nickels do not go in a dime, right? Because physically they're larger, right? She would not believe that 2 nickels are in a dime, right? So I'm
So
like,
you've
okay,
you've because of
since
that,
4 years old, she's never watching the money. And she's a
you
brilliant,
still
she's
hold
got
that
her
against
master's.
her?
She's a teacher. She's really smart.
Maybe she's you shouldn't judge her ability to handle money based on what she said when she was
Yeah,
4.
well, so, but we've teased her for that, for
Oh yeah,
50 some years. So,
that's too bad.
other
Your
thing,
poor sister.
yeah, the other thing is digital assets. Like, do you,
Mm,
you know, who gets all your Netflix accounts, who gets all your, I mean, all those things that are digital, like how do you get those over to those people? So,
yeah, and people
um,
might think, "What? That's not
yeah,
no big deal,"
there's a
but
whole,
nowadays,
yeah,
more and
there's a
more.
whole, there's like a uniform digital assets law now that we deal with.
Wow.
So we put them in, because what would happen is you would say, okay, Tony, you're getting my US bank account, right? And you go to the bank and they're like, well, they didn't say we can give you the password. I can have the money, but I can't open up the account. So crazy things like
Yeah.
that have happened. Like, even with power of attorney. So now in our power of attorney, so the power of attorney is while you're alive, right? So the power of attorney says, "Look, Tony, you have access to my bank accounts," but they wouldn't give them the access codes, right? Because now we have a provision in there, since this digital asset thing came about, that yes, they can give them the codes to get in, right? And that happened with HIPAA laws too. So the
Mm,
living will would say, "Look, Tony, I'm allowing you to pull my plug,"
mhm.
but then they said, "But it didn't say you could look at his records." Like, what? I could kill him, but I can't look at his records? No, we need another provision. So we have another
Yeah.
document that says you can go look at the records, because maybe Chris didn't want you to know why he died. Right. So
Right.
it's just crazy stuff out there. So appointing executor is important. If you're going to disinherit someone, just, and we don't need all the backstory of why you're giving people assets. And tell people where the original is. Like, we bought this bank building. We have a bank vault, like, walk-in huge closet that's a bank vault. So we've been keeping all of the original wills, because people tend to lose them, or people can't find them. They have to go, the house is a mess and they're hoarding, or they have a safe deposit box and somewhere. So,
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've been in hoarder houses. It's not pretty.
Mm,
So like on our documents, on the last page, it says the original is retained by our law office at this location. So if they have a copy, they know where the original's at. So, because if we can't find the original, it's just another process. Now we have to find the witnesses, bring them to the court, and prove that they signed this document, because the presumption is, if you can't find the original, is that the person tore it up or got rid of it.
right.
Right. So, um, and that happens. Well, if there's no original and you can't find, we can use the copy if we go through this procedure. But if you can't find anything, then we have to go by the statute of who gets what. Right.
Yeah.
So it could get pretty messy. So those are
Wow.
any questions. Okay, we're 20 minutes into this. Any questions or anything that you want me to clear up for the listeners?
No, I think you laid it out really well, and especially those, the don'ts are interesting. I don't think we normally hear about that. So that was the unique take, the first half of the show, talking about what not to put in a will.
I mean, can you imagine if you cremated the guy and he didn't want to be cremated?
Yeah, that would you
Oops.
wouldn't want to know about it actually at that point.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, but that's interesting. And then I think the most important things to know are what you should include. Missing having some of these things in place
Right.
regarding real estate and beneficiary designations. And we've talked about these things before, but I don't think you can drive home the point enough, Chris,
Yeah.
how
And the other
important
thing
this
is,
is.
just look, you've worked all your life for all these. This is not the time to like do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
not like you're cutting the lawn and it'll grow again tomorrow, and you can cut it next week. I mean,
Yeah.
you mess this up, it's big issues, especially
Even
if
a
you
bad
do it.
haircut will grow out
Yeah,
eventually.
I
So
need
give
it.
that,
Yeah.
give that. I do too. Give that number again. It's rolling across the screen before our listeners.
Okay.
Read off that number that they
So
can call for a complimentary strategy session.
yeah, so our law office number is 216-485-1040. So, just like the famous
All
tax
right.
return. So
I like that.
216-485-1040. Come in. It doesn't cost us to talk to us, and especially for our clients.
Yeah.
Look, you got to get this done. I mean,
Yeah.
between now and the end,
Yeah.
you got to get it done.
And people who say they have plenty of time,
yeah, you never know.
lots of people have said
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Prince
I
said
mean,
that. And
I had a friend whose brother, 60 years old, a couple weeks ago, just dropped out of a heart attack. 60 is not that old anymore,
no,
considering it's right around the corner.
that's way young. Yeah, exactly. You and I are pushing it a little
I'm
bit.
pushing it like in 2 months. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
you're gonna have a big one in 2 months.
yeah. So
I'll have to get out the all black suit.
that's what we'll do.
Party.
We'll do it on my birthday. We'll just everyone will
Everybody
wear
in
black. Maybe
black.
we'll even turn off the lights.
All right. No, turn
Okay.
them up brighter because you'll be
All right.
60. You need more light to see now. So
Okay, so everyone, look forward to talking to you next week. That's it for our show, and we'll see you then.